Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to day 2 of the Tilt Summer Conference. We have a few reminders before we start our workshop at 9 a.m. So in the interest of being able to start as close to that as possible, I want to just run through a few things with you. Again, my name is Sue Doe, and I want to just welcome you to a second day here. We're just so delighted with everything that went on yesterday. I heard so many people talking about their excitement and how much they learned. I can tell you that there was a kind of a wonderful personal moment. You heard Lillian talking about her son, the pilot, and it just so happened that we had a combat Vietnam veteran who was in our audience yesterday who had flown several missions, and he was absolutely delighted to hear about Lillian's son who's learning to be a flyer, and they got a wonderful picture together. So it was just a kind of a neat moment, completely unexpected for both parties. So many things that we got to learn yesterday, and I hope it was a rich experience for you. Just a few reminders about bathrooms, elevators, the program being available to you on the SummerCon webpage. There's a large printed schedule outside if you need to check that. There are charging stations available, and they're out there, I think. Yes. Okay, right there. So if you need to charge your machine, there's your place right there. Lunch will take place here in the LSC Theater. I'm going to ask everybody to just make a little mental note that when you finish the morning session, if you can scoot back here just as efficiently as possible and get your lunch, get in here, because we have quite an interesting lineup for awards, and we want to be able to kick that off on time and then hopefully finish it on time so that we can follow with afternoon events. So rather than lingering in your workshop area this morning, come on down and get your lunch and linger at the tables. As you know, we've got Zoom links, and there will be recordings of sessions. We hope that you'll join us for the conference closing session at 3:30. This will be an opportunity to engage in some reflection, and we'll be giving away our fabulous prizes. Okay, I want to remind you of the conference reflection form, and we do invite you to continue to take notes on this form. Bring it to the closing session. You'll notice that we've aligned the UDL practices with the teaching effectiveness framework. And so this makes this reflection, ever more valuable to us locally. Connecting prior knowledge to new knowledge, using templates, graphic organizers to support your learning. This should help you, and we'll do a bit of reflection at the end, which we think is, an important teaching and learning idea in and of itself. So we hope you'll join us for this. We will also have some coupons, and we hope that you're collecting for the closing session. And as you know, you can pick these tickets up at the registration table and throughout the conference. If you haven't done so already, please remember to rip the tickets in half and put the ticket portion in the box in the Kindness Lounge. You'll need to keep the coupon, your part of it, as we'll be calling out numbers, not names, and you have to be present to win. We are giving away books from the Tilt book clubs, as well as an assortment of other items. And at our final session, we will have ice cream, as if there weren't enough, rewards. There's another one. So, want to mention too the Kindness Lounge again, where we have the giveaway ticket box, the giveaway prizes, Tilt book kits, relaxing activity, and reflection questions. And so we want to encourage you to use that space. Again, I think one of the values of the summer conference is just the opportunity to sort of recalibrate, take a deep breath, think about care of self, something I think we all need more assistance with, and take care of yourself today and take care of your neighbors. There will be a book giveaway right now. So there is a lucky winner somewhere in this room. I'm hoping that you will check under your chair right now to see if you happen to be that lucky winner. Please raise your hand if you're the lucky winner. Sometimes we have to give a hint. I like your style over here. Keep just looking under other chairs. Yeah. There you go. Surely, I think I'm getting the feeling from Tanya that it must be over here somewhere, so the rest of you can sit comfortably. We make this as hard as possible. Do we have a winner? No? Not yet? Oh, priceless. Woo, Will Bromley! Woo! All right, Will. Well, and I forewarned Will and a few other folks around the room that I might ask them for one takeaway. So, Will, we give you something, then we ask for something. So, Will, you have any insights from yesterday? Something you could share, a takeaway? And shout it out if you would, so everybody can hear you. Thank you, Will. So those of you who are online, yeah, if you were not able to hear Will, he pointed to the teaching effectiveness framework and connected it to the UDL mapping. And so those of you who are online, Will eloquently spoke to that. So thank you, Will. Thanks for speaking to that. I kind of called on a table back here and just to see if anybody in that little group back there would be willing to share something you gained yesterday. Kimberly, Annie, David, somebody? Thank you, Annie. Kimberly, and I think Dean's got a microphone now. This will help too. Sure. There you go.
Oh, there we go. Okay. I was just going to kind of add into what Annie said, that it doesn't have to be something huge, and it's really just about making our classes better for our students, and something as simple as giving students choice for an assignment, right? So that's kind of my takeaway, and it actually complimented Annie, so thank you.
Thank you. And maybe one more. Barbara, are you willing to? Barbara's one of our newest employees at CSU, and she's has come to the TILT conference, and we're so grateful you're here. She works for Extension and has a lot of experience in online learning. So, Barbara, any takeaways from yesterday?
Thank you.
Yes, I take away that with a little proactive planning, we can make our courses and classrooms more inclusive and highly effective.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you so much, Barbara. Thank you to everybody for participating. We are going to start here in just a few minutes, but I think we'll just take a breath, get yourself a cup of coffee. We've got about 5 minutes till we launch. So we'll get our speaker up here in just a moment, and actually we'll come up here 1 minute before you're going to talk, Lillian, because we have a little something for you. So if you need to get a little cup of coffee real quick, go do that, and then come back here in about 3 or 4 minutes. Thank you. All right, folks, we're going to go ahead and get started here. I want to begin by, again, thanking our guest keynote and workshop leader, Lillian Nave. We're so fortunate to have her. As you know, she is the Faculty and Educational Development Specialist for the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning for Student Success, CEDLS.
Beatles, like the Beatles.
Like the Beatles, at App State's Hickory campus in North Carolina. So we're really happy to have her here again today. And before we turn the workshop over to her, we do have a little gift for Lillian, and I hope you'll join me in thanking her for being here, and a little gift from Tilt to say thank you. So Lillian, thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah.
She has no idea how lucky she is. Our past 2 years, we've given the person a river rock, and then we've had to figure out, like, how do we get that rock to wherever they live? So fortunately, this is not heavy like a rock, but who knows what we've got. Oh, this will be awkward to get on the plane, but I'm sure. Okay. Ooh. Okay. Ooh. Oh. Mm-hmm. Oh, something's coming out here.
Exciting. It's like Christmas.
Ooh. Oh. Well, there you go.
There's another
one. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think there might be something more in that bag. Here, let me help.
There's some posters I saw. Yeah. I'll bring wrapper now.
Oh, Colorado State coasters.
I can drink to my heart's content.
There you go.
Think of you.
There you go. And thank you, Lillian, again for being with us. And we'll launch right into the workshop. Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, that's beautiful. Yes. Thank you all. This has been phenomenal. Such a well put together event. You're very lucky. I get to work with some colleges, across the nation, and never been to an event that was so well produced, and I felt so welcomed, and you've got so many amazing sessions to go to, so I feel really lucky to be a part of it. So thank you so much, all of you, for inviting me. So I wanted to carry on today from yesterday's keynote and be, again, specific and practical about what we're doing that we can use some UDL guidelines to help in practical ways, especially our neurodivergent students. And so I've got another slide set, if you would like to have it. You also have, I'll say, a handout for today that is on your, and I left it on the table, but it's on the tables. Today it has a nice red rectangle that is pulling out the strategies. But at the top of that, you'll also see the QR code. So the QR code is at the top of it, so it's on your tables. If at any time you lose it, you can pull that QR code again. So you can always go deep into the slides. I know if you're looking at your phone or your computer anytime during the next hour, you're just diving deep into the materials. So I encourage you to do that. But this will be kind of the second half of today's 1 hour workshop where we'll look at specific strategies. So now you have a couple ways to get the slides because we want to have multiple means of representation. So we have a couple goals for today. I wanted to start out and go a little bit deeper on terms associated with neurodiversity. And then the next part is going to be uncovering what particular strengths and challenges neurodivergent students have. And I think that's really helpful to know who our learners are. We saw a little bit of that yesterday, and we're going to go a little deeper, and then we can see if we can match some of our design choices to help our students. And then we'll discover those interventions to help those students succeed. So the first thing we're going to do is discuss some terms associated with neurodiversity. And these have actually changed since I started the podcast in 2018, where we're seeing a lot of self-advocates in this space, that sort of the terminology has changed. So some of my earlier episode titles are going to be a little bit in conflict with some of the things I'll say. But that's because it's constantly changing. And the first thing I want to do is open our workshop up with an activity. And so we're going to start about answering this question. And the question is, what questions do you have about teaching neurodivergent students? And I'm going to start this timer and ask you to think about this question, write down your thoughts, and this is do that individually, for a minute. And then after that minute, we're going to have a chance to share in your table groups or small groups after that 1 minute of thinking. So let me start our 1 minute timer. And again, your question is, what questions do you have about teaching neurodivergent students? And you'll see NDS as the shortened form of neurodivergent students. Okay, there's an example that was up on the screen about maybe one of those questions is what kinds of resources I should provide for neurodivergent students in my class. I'd like you to take just a couple minutes to share your questions at your small table groups, and those of you joining on Zoom, you can think about what other questions you might have. So you'll have about 3 minutes to talk in your table groups about that.
Are neurodivergent but don't have those accommodations, right? Right. I don't know if this is,
But yeah, he always had headphones on. Get up and
Well, that was kind of like my question as far as like, how do I in school?
Okay, everybody, we'll wrap up in about 10 seconds. So all of you Zoomers, come on back to your screens. So I walked around and I heard a couple really great questions. I heard a lot of talking, which is wonderful. Things like, I hope I can integrate things into the curriculum that are helpful, but that nobody has to actually disclose or come and tell me that they have to do anything, because what I offer makes it easier for them. Or what happens if I try something for some students, but that actually works out being worse for other students? That'd be access friction. You know, what can I do about that? And a lot of, I don't know what to say. I'm not sure what to do in these situations. I certainly felt that way and have felt that way for a long time, until I started really diving deep into our neurodiversity literature and thinking about what we can do and seeing how UDL can really be helpful in thinking about these things. So the next thing I want to do is talk about what we just did. This is our little metacognitive moment. And why did I structure this activity this way? Well, I explained that you needed, what was the structure? I explained that you're going to have 1 minute to think before you discuss. I also had a countdown timer on the screen at that time. I gave you a pre-warning that I'm going to ask you to be social and talk to somebody else after that 1 minute is up so you can prepare. I kept the questions on the screen, and I also provided an example, so you had a bit of a criteria about what I was looking for. And the question that I asked was something that was encouraging you to make some effective connections to the content, something that would be useful and authentic in your practice. So those are all of the design choices that went in just to that opening activity. Why did I do that? Well, the 1 minute think time before discussing gave you processing time. Sometimes that's really very helpful, especially for neurodivergent students. The second thing was a countdown timer, and that's helpful for visual cueing, for time blindness, and urgency. So you know, a lot of neurodivergent people, faculty, staff, and students, have time blindness. You get into something and then you look up, it's 4 hours later, you didn't realize that. And so having that timer lets you know, I only have a specified amount of time and then I'm going to need to re-engage. The pre-warning about group discussion was a heads up for a social interaction, so if you need to get yourself ready for that, you had some time rather than a cold call type of thing. The example question was helpful for clarifying the expectations in case you hadn't even thought about what questions you might have. I gave you an example. The questions on the screen supported auditory processing and working memory, because maybe I say, okay, go, and you think, wait, what was the question again? You've got that on the screen so you can refer to it. And finally, questions to encourage making effective or emotional connections, and that's the personal connections to the content to increase engagement. So all of those are design choices that help specifically neurodivergent students. So if you can provide any of those, that will be helpful for all of those reasons. So I have Jen Pusateri to thank for this. We work together a lot. We were interviewed by T for Teaching along with Tom Tobin, who those two are also UDL powerhouses. That's going to come out on the 28th about the differences between 2.2 and 3.3. 3.0 as far as UDL guidelines. But I also interviewed her on this episode 141 where she talks exactly about this type of opening activity or something. And I came across it too at the pod conference. So I think it's one of the best ways that I can explain how all these things are helpful. Now, how many of you also found, by the way, you don't have to say if you're neurodivergent or not, were any of these things helpful for your participation in the activity? If they were, could you raise your hand? Right. So the things that we do that help our neurodivergent students tend to also help a lot more of our students, whether or not they disclose and whether or not they say they need it. It's very helpful. So, in discussing neurodiversity in our terms, I bring back the neurodiversity symbol. You may have seen a puzzle piece that's often used, kind of like a synecdoche a part of a whole. But that puzzle piece comes from just the kind of Autism Speaks Foundation, and that's one small subset of the autism world. And a lot of autistics that identify as autistics will say that they don't like that symbol to speak for all of them because it acts more like saying, we're a puzzle you have to figure out. And so the neurodiversity symbol, first of all, encompasses more than autism, but it also is not problematic in that way, in that it's a very wide spectrum. It encompasses lots of different kinds. And also, if you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person. Everybody's different. Learner variability also exists in the neurodivergent community. So, neurodiversity refers to variations in mental function that may make it difficult to learn and interact under traditional expectations. Neurodiversity is a neutral term. It's a common good. It's like biodiversity. It's not negative. It's not bad. Just like disability is neutral. It is what it is. It's not good, it's not bad, it just is. So neurodiversity explains that there's a wide variety of different kinds of brains in the world. So here's a little bit of neuro vocab. Neurodiversity refers to an idea or concept, like biodiversity, it's a noun. Neurodiverse would describe a group, although I have heard individuals who will say, I'm neurodiverse, instead of saying neurodivergent. So you'll see both of those, but in general, this is how the language is evolving. We're saying neurodiverse, it describes a group. Neurotypical would describe someone who has a brain similar to the majority. That's not normal or abnormal, that's just different. So neurotypical and neurodivergent, which is having a brain dissimilar to the majority. So now that we have some of our terms, I want to explain it another way with some of my favorite candies from the 1990s. Yes, anyone recognize these? That's right, they are Spree, that's right. It's sugar high right to the brain, it's great. So, neurodiversity is a noun, and so we are looking at the idea of a variety of colors in this group. So those multiple colors are multiple different types of brains, let's call them. Neurodiverse describes this group of green, red, orange, yellow, and purple candies, or brains. And neurotypical describes the majority. And neurodivergent, and let's say the majority are multiple colors. And neurodivergent describes this minority. So what I've done is I've taken out all of the orange Spree. There were only 4 of them. So the question is, what happens when we take away some of these brains, or we pull them out of the group? We're missing out when we do that. So neurodivergent describes the minority here. We are missing out when we don't have these brains in our classrooms, in our communities, in our workplaces. So let's talk about these orange brains. We've discussed the terms associated with neurodiversity, and now we want to see, well, what are these strengths and challenges that our neurodivergent students have? And so looking at this orange color graph, you'll see 4 different areas of neurodiversity. And we can map them out into 4 different areas that include behavioral conditions, learning disabilities, mental health conditions, and neurological conditions. So under behavioral, you'll see things like the ones we talk about mostly, because where do we see behavior? In front of us, in the classroom, right? Those are the social interactions, those are the outbursts, that sort of thing. And so that's usually where this is in our wheelhouse. So that's ADHD or ADD, vast, I like to call it, autism, Tourette syndrome. But then there's also the learning disabilities are also under neurodiversity, including dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyspraxia, and dyscalculia. Mental health conditions include OCD, depression, anxiety, or trauma. And neurological conditions like brain injury or seizures, all of those can have an effect on how the brain is able to learn or be in a learning situation or educational environment. So I bring back this graph from yesterday just to remind you that everybody is different, that every learner has a jagged learning profile, but our neurodivergent students are going to have an even spikier profile that have kind of wilder swings in those areas. That's not good or bad, that just is. So, my first audio video here is from the person that changed my life in thinking about neurodiversity, episode 52 with Gloria Niles, University of Hawaii at Manoa. And we had a wonderful talk about neurodiversity. She still has a son who's in his 20s, but when he was a teenager, he was in school. He's autistic, African-American young man. And he came home one day and he said, "Mama, how come the only place I'm disabled is at school?" Wow. And I've never forgotten that. This was about 6 years ago. And it's where I started to think about, well, what is the environment that we're creating that makes some people disabled in school, whereas he's actually a fantastic adult. Now he is a full-time firefighter, cooks for the whole firefighting company, a fantastic member of society, and it was school that was the problem for him. So let me share with you a little bit about how Gloria changed my life.
And so neurodiversity focuses on a strength-based, talent-focused approach. And so it changes the way that we shift from describing disabilities by their deficits or limitations to describing based on the talents or the strength characteristics. So redefining sort of, autism has social communication challenges, and they have a narrow focus of interest, and they're only interested in one particular topic. But really, if we shift that to a strength-based talent focus, and we would describe autism by saying they're individuals who are excellent at pattern detection. They are oftentimes technologically inclined. They are honest to a T. They're very reliable.
So we just need to flip the script when we're thinking about our neurodivergent students.
And
there we go. So let's look at some of those challenges and opportunities. So keeping the spree candy theme and somewhat of the color palette, thinking about challenges and opportunities for autism, we might think that some of those challenges are time management, having trouble with their own time management, social difficulties in being in group settings.
Should we test this one?
Thank you so much. So, sometimes communication difficulties, a need for routine, difficulty with multitasking. But what we also see is really great innovative thinking sometimes, a particularly good penchant for music or reading or drawing sometimes, incredible memory, and great detail observation. So those are some of those really fantastic strengths that autistic students and people might have. So how can we play or think about those strengths? The next thing I want to do is offer another bit about supporting neurodivergent learners. Again, this was an older episode, so I'll bring in Kiara Horlin.
We kind of found this contradiction in people saying, yes, I'm really happy, I'll accommodate anybody, but then when it comes down to it, they will contradict themselves and say, well, I don't want to be inconvenienced, I don't want to have to do extra work, I don't have the capacity for it. And it's this, these dueling motivations that can be really problematic on the behalf of the student. But the flip side of this is, if we do introduce more flexibility, if we do recognize a need to learn in different ways or meet assessments and criteria in different ways, it benefits everybody. not just people who may or may not have a diagnosis. But yeah, that's, I think, one of the things that can get lost. It's not really about inconvenience and making exceptions for one or two. It's the potential for everybody.
I will say here that the UDL does not negate the need for accommodations. And it shouldn't. And accommodations are fantastic. And shout out to my accommodations folks who are here, and disability services. But there are often a lot of things that we can do that can make it easier, not just for our neurodivergent students or some of our disabled students, that make it easier for everybody. And then that just cuts down on some of the thousands of paper cuts that we have for our students, so we can really reduce the friction and increase the academic rigor.
We kind of
So the next one, I'll look at is ADHD, challenges and opportunities. Again, big one is time management with ADHD, that time blindness kind of thing. Sometimes difficulty with teamwork. Sometimes they are the super winsome leader of the group. Sometimes concentration difficulties, right? Unfocused attention. Depression and insomnia are also some issues that go along with ADHD. And on the flip side, incredible creative thinkers and passion and courage can be fantastic leaders. Hyper-focus, this is where my son, the pilot, comes in again. He is hyper-focused on that. He is right now touring the headquarters of Virgin Atlantic in the UK on a study abroad, and told me how excited he was when I was eating my breakfast. And also really great visual spatial reasoning. So again, great challenges. What are things that we can do that might offer for some of our students to explore these wonderful opportunities that they have? And one more audio clip about this.
They are 50% of the students requesting accommodations for psychological disorders and ADHD. So if we're not already planning for the disruptions, the variability that those students bring to us, we're really making the barriers even higher for them. So if I can share that kind of data with faculty members and they see that universal design for learning is going to help them, it's going to help the students before that request for accommodation is even made, then they see the sense of this, right? Now we're talking many more individuals are going to need additional support than what we used to think. So we now move the thinking away from, it's just these few individuals, I'll deal with it later, to, oh, there's a significant number of students who need this kind of support, I need to deal with it now. So I would make friends with those people who help those students. They are.
So one more, dyslexia, challenges and opportunities. So we're seeing that there are so many of our students that fall under that neurodivergent umbrella. And maybe you're only seeing the few that ask for accommodations, but there are so many more in our classrooms. So with dyslexia, challenges include another one: time management, memory, self-esteem, stress management, communication skills. But what they do have as strengths include creativity, and my favorite word to say when I'm on stage, entrepreneurialism. Woo! Yeah, I know. Practical skills, storytelling ability, and visual spatial reasoning again. So when we flip the script, we have a lot to work with. And so one of the major challenges that we have, as you saw, was time management, and that falls under executive functions. And so I wanted to play a little bit about what executive functions are and how it plays into how neurodivergent students learn, and then we'll get into some more.
According to our How to ADHD dictionary, executive function, noun, is a set of cognitive processes that help us self-regulate so we can effectively plan, prioritize, and sustain effort toward our goals. Executive function is kind of like the CEO of the brain. It helps us go from wanting to do a thing to actually getting it done. And there's a lot that goes into that. The cognitive processes that make up executive function are things like response inhibition, which helps us not be impulsive, working memory, which helps us hold information in our head temporarily or remember it while we work with it, set shifting, which is what helps us shift between tasks that have different cognitive demands, and the ability to delay immediate gratification so we can achieve long-term rewards. In ADHD, the research term for this is delay aversion. These functions help us with what people often call being an adult, which makes sense because executive function is located in the last part of the brain to develop and doesn't fully develop until around the age of 25. In ADHD brains, it takes even longer. According to ADHD researcher Dr. Russell Barkley, executive function in ADHD is up to 30% delayed, which is why those with ADHD can seem immature. And even once it does fully develop, it's still impaired. So some of the things parents do to support their kids' executive function: make sticker charts, lists, put away distractions, create routines they might have to do more of or for longer for their ADHD kids. And as adults, we often need to do this for ourselves. This is so critical for those of us with executive function challenges that Dr. Barkley compares it to building a ramp for someone in a wheelchair. It's a necessary accommodation if we want to get to where we're trying to go. Not everyone with ADHD has impairments with all of the cognitive processes involved in executive function. For example, one brain's working memory might be just fine, but everyone with ADHD does have impairment in executive function overall. Often, it's not that we don't know what to do, it's that we don't have the executive function to effectively do it. So if you or someone you love is having a hard time getting things done, you might ask, is this actually about effort, or is this an executive function issue? When trying to create an ADHD-friendly environment, you might consider what would make things easier on executive function. If there are behaviors you want to discourage, you might ask, what would require more executive function? How can I make doing this thing harder? And if you're having a bad brain day because you didn't sleep well last night, you could say, my executive function isn't doing great right now. Maybe I need to skip the complicated intro. Because, as my good friend Eric Tivers puts it, we can do hard things, but we don't need to do them in the hardest way possible.
Yeah, we can do hard things, but we don't need to do them in the hardest way possible. Now, I've seen some LMS shells of courses, and it's like some faculty are trying to give an obstacle course for their students to find what they're supposed to do in the class, right? So organization and structure can be helpful. We don't have to make it the hardest thing possible for students to do. So that's the kind of thing we're looking toward fixing or changing.
According to our How to ADHD.
So executive functions include the things that you see here about organizing, prioritizing, getting to work, focus, and memory, effort, and at the top, actions and emotions. So those are the things that we can help with our neurodivergent students, is if we can organize and design our courses, our assignments, and our things better, then we're helping all of our students, but especially those who are neurodivergent. So, we've just uncovered what particular strengths and challenges neurodivergent students have, and now we're on to the last half, which includes interventions to help our neurodivergent students succeed. So, the 5 areas I'm going to look at are the motivation is number 1, then focus and attention, and this is on your handout, and you'll see what strategies are listed under each one. They go in opposite, kind of white and then gray, white and then gray, in order. Focus and attention, then organization and structure, social expectation, and time management. So what I'm going to do for the rest of our time is I'm going to give the practical implication of what is one strategy or intervention, and it'll be from 1 to 3 in each one of these areas, and then you'll have some time to say, well, how does this work in my context in your tables, okay? So that's the rest of our time, and we've got 24 minutes until 10 o'clock, which will be just perfect. So the first one is motivation. Support area is how do we motivate our students? And for that, I'm going to pull out of our emotional capacity on the green column from UDL and say, look at recognize expectations, beliefs, and motivations. And for that, I want to introduce to you something called INCUP. Anybody heard of INCUP? Oh, I'm so glad I get to introduce this to you. It's my favorite, INCUP. INCUP stands for interest, novelty, challenge, urgency, and passion. So this is something that will help with student motivation. Oh my gosh, there's a TEF domain called student motivation. And in that TEF domain, it says, use content and connections that align with students' interests. And that's where we use INCUP. So think about assignments that you have, or think about learning activities that you have. And what choices can you give your students that it's something that they're interested in, or something new, different, or exciting? That's novelty. Challenge is something that challenges them, because that's especially appropriate for ADHD. I love a challenge. I love, if somebody tells me it's gonna be 4 hours in a snowstorm for me to get to my next speaking gig, I'm like, oh yeah, let's try that. I'm gonna do that. I love a challenge, and then I'm ready to be like, okay, what's next? I wanna do it once, and then I wanna go on to something else. Urgency, something that needs to be done right away, and that's a lot with that executive function. It's like, if you give me a deadline 2 weeks away, I'm probably gonna start it very close to the end of that 2 weeks, rather than a little bit, because that's the way my brain works as an ADHDer. And P, passion, something they're passionate about. So that just means if you've got an option that you can give choice and flexibility for your students, then you can play into that strength for a neurodivergent student. And that will help them to complete the assignment and probably do a much better job than if maybe you put out all of the structures and told them didn't give them too many variables, is what I'm saying. So, in your table groups, now, how can you apply this UDL and TEF strategy to motivate students thinking about INCUP? And you'll have, let's say, about 4 minutes to talk about that in your table. How does it work in your context? I hate to break up your conversations, but I have more to tell you. That's just the start. It's just the start. I love it. The next part or area to think about after motivation, and some folks will put motivation, focus, and attention kind of all under the same umbrella. But thinking, I split them up just to give a little attention to NCUP. And I wanted to talk about focus and attention. What are those things? Similar to NCUP is the optimizing choice and autonomy. So student choice in topics, tools, methods, and how to meet goals. That is also in the inclusive pedagogy. And what I'm saying here too is, what can you do that's authentic for the student as well? Like, how can it be applied to their life? And so very similar to NCUP, how is it that even when you're presenting in your classroom, so maybe you've given them a survey in the beginning and you kind of find out a little bit about the students, and you know that maybe you're doing something that's local to their dorm, right, or their parking situation on campus, right? I don't know, we have that, I don't know. You probably have all the parking you need. Yeah, okay.
All human beings are what I like to call a combination of the 3H. So it's my 3H model.
Okay.
And what that means, very simple. Head, hands, heart. So big picture, life is about your head. So what do you know? And how does that knowledge inform you and what you do and what you think and what you believe? The hands is what are your skills? And so how do you take the knowledge that you have, and this can be related to work or related to social relationships or what have you. In this context, it's related to school. So what do you know? What can you do with it? And then the heart is, why do you care? And so when I look at UDL, so the representation is the head. So how do you engage with content with your students? The how is the action and the expression. So how do you get the students to work with the knowledge?
Yeah.
Far beyond answering a multiple choice test. And then the final piece is the engagement, which is the heart. So it's the why. Why are we doing this? And I tell my teacher candidates, I said, the number one thing you need to have prepared to answer to your students every day is when they ask you, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
And you have to have at least 3 really good answers.
Yeah. Right, so including what you're teaching into the relevance for your students would be making the content relevant to students' lives. That's helpful for focus and attention.
All human.
The second area for focus and attention is supporting multiple ways to perceive information, and that includes things like graphic organizers and guided notes. And so what you have today in front of you is a graphic organizer. That also falls under instructional strategies. Guided notes are things that you might give them a page or two with some blanks or some areas for them to add on after you've maybe put an organizational topic on each one. That helps with focus during lectures, enhances memory retention, provides hierarchical structure for that information, because you might be saying all these things. It's in your brain how it's organized, but they might just have a crazy organizational structure there that does not follow, that they don't realize that this is a separate entity, right, for each new idea. So those would be helpful. And finally, for focus and attention, this is another one for designing options for interaction, which is honor the methods for response, navigation, and movement. And this has to do with our physical bodies. So allowing and setting up class norms to allow fidgeting and stemming. So this goes along with classroom climate. So being able to knit or crochet, or doodle. Use stemming. You might see people shaking their foot or things like that, or setting up class norms. It's okay if you need to get up in class, if you're okay with it, if it's not distracting to you, but that if people need to stand up and stretch, if you need to stand up in the back of the class and do something, that's fine. So having that bodily ability or regulation is also going to help your students who are neurodivergent with their focus and attention. So in your table groups, we'll have another 3 minutes here to think about what is something that you might think about employing in your class that has to do with focus and attention? And here are the things that we just looked up. So I'll give you another 3 minutes to look at that in your table groups. Yeah, no, that's fine. What does stemming mean? Okay, can I take a picture of that and then? Yeah. Thank you. I wonder if I should do it for everybody, so make sure I got that picture. Okay. Good. I will answer that. Thank you. Hey, everybody. I want to pull us back, and I saw that I have 2 questions on the Zoom chat, and I wanted to address those. And one question was, what does stemming mean? And stemming is a short form for stimulation. So stemming can be anything like moving the body, moving the hands. Sometimes it's the head, sometimes it's the fingers, or flapping. Sometimes we'll call it flapping, or just a lot of movement. And that exterior bodily movement helps to calm the interior. So stemming is something that is positive and helps for neurodivergent folks to regulate. If you were to artificially try to stop that stemming, that causes even more dysregulation. So that's what stemming is, S-T-I-M-M, like stimulation. And the other question I got, which is a great question, is about the are we really thinking about positive stereotypes when you say autistic people have better memory or have a great memory? And why don't we just think about all people being different, because not everybody's going to have those particular strengths and weaknesses. And that is absolutely correct. These are not meant to be stereotypes. This is some self-reported research, and also, so it's autistic and ADHD and neurodivergent people self-reporting what their strengths are. This will not be the same for everybody. No, I'm just saying that there are some self-reported strengths. I have the resources and the methods or the articles at the end of the talk. And these are what, if you were to ask just a general sampling of neurodivergent people, what they said their strengths, challenges, and opportunities are. These are just some of the things that I reported. And I am not saying, this is very correct of the person who wrote this on Zoom, I'm not saying that this is what all autistic people are like. Some don't have fantastic memory. This is not going to be the strength for all autistic people. So thank you for pointing that out and asking that clarifying question. But I'm presenting that research from self-reporting to think about, well, what are, if we haven't thought about those as strengths before, are there any ways that we can offer options? So if you do have that, you could play into that. That's what these are hopefully offering for us. So thank you. And person who asked that question, let me know if you have a follow-up. Okay. I'm going to go over the next two together, organization and structure, and then social expectation. And so for that organization and structure, let's think about organizing information, like in learning activities. And when you are presenting that information, this might be helpful. And this links to inclusive pedagogy. So let's think about maybe an in-class. Now, whether it's online or in person, you can do this. This is using a lot of passive time. So the red is passive learning, listening to a lecture. And so maybe the instructor is giving a 5-minute intro, then talks about topic 1, topic 2, topic 3, and then there's a 10-minute Q&A. Let's vary the times with some active learning strategies. And so let's say we have an intro, 5 minutes, here's what we're going to talk about, here's the first topic, then you've got 5 minutes. Let's see what a reaction is, what's the poll, let's discuss this, let's have some interaction with each other at our tables, or even some reflection, write it down. Then topic 2, okay, here's another mini lecture, talk about that, and then 5-minute reflection. Again, you can do whatever you want. Maybe it's a case study that you have students working on together. Then topic 3, 15 more minutes talking about that, and then small groups, 10 minutes, and finally a Q&A. Or maybe you're throwing in Q&A where they're writing down questions and sending to you, and you have that breakout time. So that's going to help with organization and structure of the classroom, so it's not one long block of talking. And that's something that probably many of you are already doing and didn't realize you were doing some UDL. And a little bit about why that's good.
I think for me, it all comes down to that organization of the course and being clear, because I think if students know what to expect, both in terms of what they will be learning, but then what the assignments are, that they can adjust and that they can excel. So I would say good organization is the first step, and then finding ways to engage students in different types of learning activities that can highlight their strengths. Now, not all of them need to be that way, but everyone should have the opportunity to showcase their knowledge in the way that they best can. And so if you offer different types of formative and summative assessments, then you give everyone that chance of doing the best in the class that they can.
The SALT Center is the student support at Arizona, and love talking with our student support folks. Another for organization and structure are things like concept maps that highlight patterns and relationships, much like guided notes. That's going to help your students. That's one of our instructional strategies, help students organize knowledge with concept mapping. And that just means that they're trying to give a visual representation of what you have been talking about, and piece those things together so they understand the highlight, like they understand how these things interrelate. And if you can even provide an outline, something like that, or have students work together and see how they perceive of that organization of the information, that's also going to help. So, designing passive and active learning activities and class time, concept maps. I'm going to go one more, and then you'll have a chance to discuss, and that's social expectation. Recognizing expectations, beliefs, and motivations. And that means whenever we can, we need to provide really clear roles. If students are going to work in small groups, and what are they supposed to do when in their small groups? Is one person going to be taking notes? Is somebody the editor? Is somebody the producer? Is somebody the organizer to make sure we get together at night? Who's going to collect the email addresses? All of those things, because it may not come naturally. And we want them to actually get to the work, not all of those organizational problems. So this comes under feedback and assessment, providing structure and guidelines for student group work and group assignments. And this is one of my earliest episodes about group work.
You know what? I want you to come up with the best answer. I want you to be happy with what you come up with, because I want you to use this actually as a portfolio piece to show who you're interviewing with in the future, that you can come up with great ideas, and this is your process, and you have something to show for it. I want you to be proud of your work. It's not just about a grade. This is about your life and your journey and how you can show others what you can do.
So, group work guidelines, group contracts, explicit behavior expectations, all of those can be really helpful for that. So I'll give you 2 minutes on the next 3 on your list, which are organization and structure and social expectation. And then we'll come back with the last 2. So 2 more minutes to talk and see what you might use. Picture. Okay. We are on to our very last one. And I know we started just a few minutes late with my lovely gift, and I appreciate that. But I am going to finish in about 3 minutes here. The last thing to look at is time management as we near the end of 10 o'clock, right? We're at 10 o'clock. Time management. Course calendars and student reminders are really great for enhancing a student's ability to monitor their progress. So here's an example of a course calendar. I have a lot of first-year students, and they didn't know what they needed to prepare before class, what they were supposed to do between classes. So I mapped it out for them with a really visual course calendar. I'm happy. I've shared this with a lot of people, and it was really helpful for students to know when they had to complete some things, what we were doing in class that day, what they needed to be prepared for, if we were going to discuss something, what exactly that was, when they had to do it, et cetera, what they should be preparing before classes. Because if the syllabus just says chapter 1 on Wednesday, a lot of them are coming from a high school environment where you would actually go and do that chapter 1 in class. You didn't have to prepare it before you got there. So making those expectations really clear. Another thing is scaffolding skills. with time management, like I'm thinking of a reading log. Like in the first 4 weeks of class, I might say, okay, I need you to read chapter 1. It's about 30 minutes long. Read that Monday, Tuesday. Chapter 2 is another 30 minutes. You're going to read that Wednesday, Thursday, so that we can have your small discussion groups on Friday. And then the next 4 weeks after that, we'll say, okay, I want you to come up with what's your time management routine for making sure you get the stuff done by the end of the week. And then I'm gradually releasing that. And then the next 4 weeks there, I'm not giving them any signals at all. They have to be coming up with it. But I've already modeled it for them. I've then handed it off to them, and then they're doing it themselves. That helps with time management. So, the last thing to discuss are, what about course calendars, student reminders, just sending an email. It's really easy to do. You can set them up to go out the first day of class and go out every week if you want. Reading activity times for resources, like saying, this is going to take you about 3 minutes to watch this video, so they know they can do it in between classes, or they can do it at a certain, when they're riding the bus, something like that. That's giving them cues so that they know, I didn't know if this chapter was going to take 45 minutes, and if they don't, they're going to push it off and push it off and push it off. If they know this is 15 minutes, I can get that done. And then offloading that gradual responsibility for like a reading log or something like that. All right, 2 more minutes, and then we'll close up. What could you use?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
We're
Right, so-
absolutely fine. And
Yeah.
because
Thanks for the buffer.
It'll take them
Yeah.
2 minutes to get to their 10,
Okay.
15 event.
Okay, great. All right, so I'll pull them back, and then I just got like a closing slide.
Yes. It's a really fast workshop. I mean, we just, I think that's what works.
I could give them much more time to discuss that kind of thing, and I could have cut the first half.
It's great. Look, this one, it's good to see a little bit of yourself in there, because it's, I mean, we all need to feel like we're not starting out so much, so it's just great, very practical and choice. Yes, thank you.
Okay. I'm afraid it's time. It's time to wrap this up. And I've so enjoyed being with you. And we had one more question from the Zoom chat, which was about, as a fellow ADHDer, I often feel stigmatized or at least misunderstood for being neurodivergent and not neurotypical. What advice do you have to interrupt stigma towards neurodivergent students and staff at CSU? I think awareness is our top thing. I am a proud ADHDer, and it gives me a superpower of time blindness sometimes. And so I can do a lot of work in a little bit of time. And it also causes me some stress sometimes. But the more we can have awareness, and if you are a faculty member and you identify as neurodivergent, tell your students if you're comfortable. Let them know they're not alone. And there are disability cultural centers. I have an episode about that. That's just a way of creating awareness on a college campus about disability, and that it's not a bad thing. It isn't a bad thing. So we have to flip the script on why it has become such a bad thing, and it's not. It's just different. So the more times we can have Tilt show up about, these are really great strategies, or just students are different, what they're already doing to raise awareness is a great step, because The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single shift, and you are already doing it. So thank you so much for having me, and I really appreciate it, and you have a wonderful day coming up. So here's your resources.
Thank you again, Lillian. We so appreciate your keynote and your workshop today. I think we got some very practical ideas, and I was telling Lillian it's reassuring also to sort of recognize a few things in there that, you know, you probably are feeling like maybe I do a little bit of this, and I'm on my way, and I've picked up some new things, and the depth of knowledge here is just well, unequaled. So thank you so much, Lillian. Let's give her another hand. And if you'd like to connect with Lillian at all, I want to just warn you that she's leaving promptly at noon. So if you want to say hi to her or something, make sure you do that as soon as possible. We now head into our 10:15 to 10:45 breakout session. So this is a 30-minuter, and then we have a little break in between that and the next session, which is an hour-long session. So just a reminder: 30 minutes, then a little break. And then at 11 a.m., another session from 11 to 12. So I hope you'll find your way to those sessions. And then just a reminder, at 12 noon, come down here lickety-split, get your food, and get seated. At 12:20, we will promptly begin the award ceremony. So if you're standing out there in line, you'll have to just listen from a distance. But I hope you'll be sitting down. And thank you, and enjoy your breakout sessions. Thank you.